Hello, and welcome to I Hate Talking, a podcast about talking, including etymology, frustrating topics, current events, and other random subjects. I'm Adam.
And I'm Steph. We are married, and we invite you into these discussions with us as we talk about the good and the bad of talking.
We hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to episode 37 of I Hate Talking.
Hi, everyone.
So our word or phrase comes from a word that we were using in a recent trip that we took, and that word is kitschy.
We used it in reference a few times, and one of our kids asked, what does that mean? We're like, I can't describe it. So I can't wait for you to describe it.
Correct. And in that moment, I said that it was something that is not very artful. It's somewhat corny, sort of maybe overdone, or something that is done in a way that sort of is either makes fun of a particular art form or is something that is sort of just a not necessarily knockoff artwork, but just something sort of in that vein of having a lot of excessive art form. So yeah, I did a very poor job of explaining it in that moment, and I'm doing a very poor job of explaining it now, and that will be why we tackle this word or phrase, kitschy, in this episode.
Yeah, I think when I picture it, I think of it kind of artsy, like off the beaten path, not sophisticated. That's what I think of.
Yep, that's a good way to describe it, I think. And even when I hear the word kitschy, I sort of picture like the I Love New York style artwork, that kind of thing, that it's sort of just overdone, overhyped, and just kitschy.
Yeah, and like excessive, like you don't need it. Like maybe you'd have a bunch of little, I Heart New York bells or plushies, or maybe a bunch of little clowns on a counter just for decoration.
Precisely. So, from our favorite Oxford Language Dictionary, this word is within that dictionary, though in some dictionaries, I guess it is considered somewhat of slang, but kitschy in terms of the adjective, so again, a descriptive term for some sort of object, reads, of art, objects, or design considered to be in poor taste because of excessive garnishness or sentimentality, but sometimes appreciated in an ironic or knowing way. And the example given here is kitschy souvenir shops.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's how we used it.
And this does, as you look at the usage over time, spike in the late 1900s and continues to be used in the modern day, so a more recent word. But the reason for that is because before the word kitschy was just simply the word kitsch.
Okay, and kitsch means the same thing?
Somewhat. It has a more close definition of something that is, again, sort of with the souvenir culture, but it actually has more of an emphasis on the poor taste, or even from the word kitsch in German that means worthless, trashy art.
Okay.
So we finally have gotten away from our French etymology, and we have finally arrived at a word that comes from Germanic origin, and that actually may be apparent if you read the word because it has a SCH in the word. But that kitsch is the source of the word kitschy that has been used in the modern English, but came from the German word that has been adopted into English, meaning worthless, trashy art.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a compliment if someone says, "Oh, your taste is very kitschy," or "This gift you just gave me is so kitschy."
Well, you're asking the right questions, because that is the very next AI suggested question on Google that reads, "Is kitschy a compliment?" And the answer is perhaps so, if that's what you're going for.
So if you like ironic and that sort of thing, Like I think of Bob Ross, artist, like his not necessarily his drawings, but like his inspired stuff, I would call kitschy. But if you like him and if you like the irony of it all, then that would be a compliment, right?
Perhaps so. And I don't know if that would fall exactly within kitschy. Perhaps it does. I think I picture more of like a, again, overdone sort of excessive or, like you said, not very subtle, or what was the word you used earlier?
Unsophisticated.
Unsophisticated. So that's sort of what comes to mind, because I think there is, in the Bob Ross, there is some sophistication and the reflection of nature and things like that, because he is not just making artwork for artwork's sake, but actually trying to capture some sort of
Happy little trees.
happy little trees. And the word kitsch, if we even go back further in the etymology, is that it's actually a relatively recent word in even German, and probably came to be used in the 1860s or 1870s in Munich. And there's a number of different German words that have perhaps been used in sort of the generation of this word. There are some words that mean to smear or to throw, or even some very close words in German that means to cheapen or to make cheap. And that is the proposed and theorized source of the word kitsch in German. So the reason that this word came up was, in fact, because of one of the things that I picture when I use this word kitschy with the I Heart New York, and that is because we took a trip to New York and saw many different kitschy souvenir shops along our travels.
Yeah. And I was a big advocate for our children to buy anything that was I Heart New York because it was just iconic. So, okay, can something be iconic and kitschy?
I think, and sometimes that even may make something one or the other. So maybe there is some sort of relationship and overlap there between iconic and kitschy.
Okay. I was telling him, like, get a beanie. It's cold. And, like, I Heart NYC is definitely something that's everyone gets. And that's just a classic souvenir. Only one kid got something from it. Everyone else got something else, like Legos. But we'll go into that in a little bit, I'm sure.
And I guess that was the snow globe was the one that was the kitschy souvenir.
No. We got a plushie, a bear.
The bear with the I Love New York
I Heart
embroidered on it.
Yep.
And then there was a Statue of Liberty figurine.
Yeah, that was purchased at the Statue of Liberty appropriately.
Also sort of kitschy.
Yeah. Well, and then someone else got Statue of Liberty glasses that when you put them on, it looks like you're wearing the crown and you had sunglasses.
Also sort of kitschy.
Yeah. And then the snow globe from the Statue of Liberty. And then I don't often buy myself souvenirs. I feel like you actually are more likely to when we go away. But I got myself a really pretty mug. I watched it all 3 days we were there. I saw it in the windows. And the final day I got it. And it's just a pretty mug with all the scenery in gold. And then we got a tree ornament from New York.
So probably less kitschy for those final two examples.
I guess so. But they're still very...
Kitschy?
No, well, I guess. But still very, like, souvenir-esque. I don't have a mug from other states or cities we go to.
That's true. But I think there's some utility in the mug, as well as the fact that it's maybe... I think the utility thing, I think maybe has more to do with what I would consider whether it's kitschy or not, because if it has utility, it's not necessarily going to be explicitly artwork as a standalone thing. So a tree ornament or a snow globe or a representation of the Statue of Liberty, those are not really going to have much utility besides just being there and being looked at, and then therefore would fall squarely within the category of artwork. and kitschy typically defines the artwork. Now, that artwork could be depicted on a utilitarian
Right. So if it's a
item.
mug that says I Heart NYC, is that kitschy or is that utilitarian?
It would be kitschy if it was like the logo, the I Heart New
Okay.
York. But because it's like New York and some words and buildings with the golden emblazoned.
Yeah, it's a pretty mug, right?
Yes, that
I love it.
is less kitschy because it does have utility and it does not have necessarily those garish artwork type things that are on there.
Yours is, but that's your opinion of it. Somebody who doesn't like gold probably thinks my mug is garish.
I suppose so. And then a t-shirt from New York, maybe if it is stylish, would not be kitschy, but if it again is emblazoned, am I saying that correctly? Emblazoned.
Emblazoned?
I don't think so.
Jeez.
Emblazoned. That if that shirt is stylish and not necessarily having that iconic logo or whatever the case may be, that will be more utilitarian, less kitschy, whereas something that is in this word, maybe a bonus word, garish, which means obtrusively bright and showy, that is going to be more within the category of kitschy, even though the t-shirt may have some utility.
Okay. What about the glasses that are half sunglasses, half green crown, like the Statue of Liberty?
So those in my mind would fall within the kitschy category because while they do have utility, the utility is greatly reduced by the fact that they are the shape that they are, as well as just sort of the cheap nature of the plastic, as well as the lenses. So falls within sort of that cheap artwork category that we were talking about that defines kitschy.
So we definitely went and we were 100% tourists. We were walking around with those sunglasses on and all the I Heart NYC stuff. We did not blend in at all.
That is true. And that was what we were there to do, was to be tourists. So I don't think that was a problem, nor do I think that's really a place where you're necessarily looked down upon as a tourist. I think that almost New York has that aspect of being a tourist place and actually embracing and encouraging some of this kitschiness, so to speak.
Right. But you definitely could see people that work there or are there often compared to us because of their dress was different. Also, the way they walk, their cadence was so different. We were so slow compared to them. And especially because we're kind of a larger family, especially in the city there. So we take up a lot of space. Everyone's like, jaws are on the ground, like looking straight up, looking at all the buildings and stuff, where you could see somebody who is from there, how quick their stride was and how focused they were on getting to their destinations. I kept feeling bad, like, sorry, because we were just taking up so much space.
That is true. And we also, I think, for the most part, obeyed the traffic signals, which is not always the case for a native New Yorker that may just start walking on the crosswalk upon a bright red, orange hand signal to not proceed. But we, for the most part, only walked during the white walking person phase of the traffic signal.
Yes, we definitely did. I was very strict about that with just the crowds and the traffic. I did not want it to end up being a disaster or a really sad time. But yeah, so we definitely obeyed the laws and walked slower than most.
And had all our kitschy souvenirs.
Yeah. And we also carried everything with us. We did not have any checked bags. Each one of us had one small backpack, and we kept everything with us the whole time. So that took a while, too.
Precisely. And that was for two main reasons, because this was a relatively quick trip that we took that was only, I guess, 2 nights, 3 days total.
Mm-hmm.
And via an airline that had significant fees for any sort of checked bags.
Yes.
as well as the fact that we did not have a permanent hotel for those 2 nights. We actually changed hotels, one each night, and then had to transition from airports to hotel and hotel to another hotel and then back to said airport. So it would have been a lot of extra steps to have checked bags either at the hotel or at a bag check, as well as the additional fees that would have incurred.
Right. We looked into bag checks and such at hotels, but just having to go back and forth, we tried to be very strategic with our what we saw and how we did things. So we would have had to go way out of our way to go back to bag check. Yeah, it worked out great.
And it did work out great, but it almost did not work out great among many different steps of this trip. And I think that's what we'll focus on for the next part of this episode is just all the planning that we did or attempted to do, and then the ways that almost went off track, but we were able to recover and still make our timetables for all the different things that we wanted to accomplish.
Yes, we had a major theme. Again, we were only gone for 54-ish hours total, right? 55?
54 hours, that's correct.
54.
Well,
So-
that's what we should have been gone for.
So it wasn't a long time. It wasn't supposed to be. And we did a lot of planning. But the overarching theme that kept showing up was us rushing and almost being late to finding out that we have a lot of waiting time. So it was like a rush, and then stop and wait over and over every single time.
That is true. And then I also think that some of our issues were exacerbated because of difficulty to find real and accurate information. And I think I blame AI a little bit for that because we were trying to find certain things, and instead of just the search engine taking us to a website that would list out the details that we need to know with like schedules or where things are located, we kept arriving at these AI generated results that were either outdated and maybe like using information from like 2017 that was far outdated and no longer even close to current reality, or was just completely wrong or somehow interpreted the raw results of what was actually stated on a website somewhere and just like translated it incorrectly. We even had an issue where it thought we were in Central Time Zone, but obviously New York is in Eastern Time Zone. So that created some confusion as well.
Right. Well, yeah, totally jumping ahead. But when that happened, it was for our flight back and it got delayed. And it said that it was going to take 25 hours of travel time. And I almost cried because I was like, we can't do this for 25 hours. One, tomorrow we have a really, coming home, we had a very busy day. So we were going to have to start calling people and getting people to take our responsibilities for us. Also, I was like, do we just rent a car at this point? We can't spend 25 hours in an airport. But yes, it got confused with the time zones or something happened and it was
Precisely.
Okay.
Yep. I checked the airline website and it had a arrival time that was delayed. So it was different than what had originally been scheduled for. And the original scheduled arrival time was before midnight, but the new arrival time, because of the delayed flight on the return leg, was past midnight. It interpreted that as adding an extra 25 hours instead of just one single hour to our itinerary.
Yeah. So thank goodness we did not have to rent a car and just drive home, which would have been faster than 25 hours.
I suppose so. So that was at the tail end of the trip, but our delays and nearly running off track began at the start of our trip at our departure airport.
Yes. Well, getting to the airport, we go to this airport fairly often. We know this route very easily. We even checked traffic beforehand, and something happened on the way, I guess accidents or whatnot, and traffic took over double what we anticipated. So that was stressful because even though we gave ourselves plenty of time, we did not think it would take twice as long to drive to the airport.
Correct. And then the parking structures have since changed, and we were trying to get to a particular parking lot that again,
They
would
wouldn't let us. Yeah.
save us a few dollars and we would ride the shuttle. But for whatever reason, we got stuck in this lane that only had access to either a parking lot that had no shuttle, but was walkable, though a far distance, especially with 4 little kids in freezing temperatures,
Mm-hmm.
or park in the very expensive parking garage. So we opted to save the dollars
And walk.
and walk.
So, yeah. And then we get to the airport. We were cutting it close between the amount of walking we had to do and the amount of car traffic we did not anticipate. We were very lucky. The TSA went so smooth. Everything was good. We didn't have to wait at all there. That was good. So then we get to our gate.
Correct. So we are doing all this rushing, though there was an extra step, and I think this added some delay before we knew that our flight was delayed. So spoiler alert, the flight was delayed. We were rushing in the traffic to the airport, trying to find the correct parking lot, rushing through the walk to the entrance, getting through TSA. Like you said, that was actually very expedient and went very well.
Mhm.
And then we had to make a bus transfer from the main terminal to the satellite terminal.
I forgot. Yes. We
to
did not expect that. We're like, oh no.
So that added some extra time that we were not anticipating either. So we were luckily on the first bus, did not really add necessarily any extra waiting time, but it was definitely extra transition time. And then we do arrive at our gate, and our plane is delayed by at least a few hours, I think.
Yeah. Well, so we show up. Everything's fine. We're like, oh, whew, we can take our deep breaths. Like, we have like 20 minutes before we load. Perfect. Let's fill up our water bottles and relax. Yeah, 15, 20 minutes, no problem. And then they tell us, if you're at this flight, we've changed your gate, go over here. So we load up everything again, and we all rush, a whole bunch of us, over to our gate that's supposed to be boarding any minute. Once we get there, they announce it's delayed like an hour. I'm like, oh, okay. So we all kind of get situated as a whole group. And then maybe a half hour later, we find out it's delayed more and more. It just kept delaying it every half hour, 45 minutes. They'd push it back farther.
And I think the departure time did sort of stabilize at some point, because there was at one point that I was worried that the flight was going to get canceled altogether,
Mm-hmm.
and that we were going to basically probably still get to our destination, but lose on our one of 2 nights in a hotel. But nonetheless, we were able to get on the plane at some point in time and get to our destination in Newark. And I guess part of the reason that delay happened was because there was a flight going to Detroit that had some sort of issue. So they believe they took our equipment, our plane that we were supposed to be on, and used it for that Detroit trip that was even further delayed, right? That was much more delayed than our departure to Newark, and then get us a new plane and move things around in that nature. But we did make it to Newark, which I think was hours later than expected. But we did arrive, and I think the flight was relatively uneventful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even slept some because I knew that I would need my rest for the late night in getting from the airport to the hotel, and perhaps a less amount of sleep at said hotel because we had a appointment that we thought was at the right time the following morning.
That's my fault. Okay.
And there was even more before that.
Yes. Okay. So on the flight, yes, the flight was they did a great job. We were safe. You slept. I dozed off. One of our kids stayed up and colored for almost the whole time. So I finally woke up and was like, you have to go to bed, bud. Just go to sleep. So I had him turn off his overhead light. And seconds, I promise it was seconds later, they turn on all the overhead lights. And they're like, prepare for landing. And I was like, well, that was pointless. But we landed, and then we thought we were done. But we didn't realize we had to take another shuttle to another location. So we did that.
Well, we did realize we were going to have to do this. So At the Newark airport, we landed at a terminal. We took the little air train from the terminal to the rental car area, or basically ground transportation to hotels. That was sort of that one little transition. And then there was supposed to be a shuttle that was running every 15 minutes to our hotel from the ground transportation stop. However, when we arrived, there were many, many people waiting and angry at the ground transportation location.
Yes, I'm not quite sure what happened. They were saying they were waiting for so long, and they kept only bringing like a 7-8 passenger van. So then that was stressful because I'm like, well, by the time it's our turn, we'll take up the whole thing. Now, there was a nice lady there that was telling people like, hey, look, they have a bunch of little kids. Like, it is so late. It was it was the next morning. They let them to go. But we did not want to make that other guy more angry. So we stayed. I took the kids back in where it was warmer because it is sub-zero, like below zero, right? At that point, or at least below freezing.
It was in the teens, I believe, with the wind chill, it would have been in single digits.
Yeah. So
Fahrenheit.
That's right. So I took them inside, and you stood outside trying to save our spot and figure out what was going on with the shuttle. We played with ideas of like, do we Uber it? Do we rent a car? How can we do this? Because we need to get some sleep.
And I suspect that it was not necessarily that driver's fault because, again, we weren't there for the previous interactions that perhaps these folks that were waiting had with the other shuttle driver or maybe the existing shuttle driver. But I suspect that this shuttle driver may have started his shift at this particular time and sort of just inherited all this problem. So maybe the previous shift driver was slacking or there wasn't proper shift coverage or whatever the case may be. So I suspect that may have been the case. And part of the reason that I suspect that is because he came back the second time with a much larger vehicle and was able to, I think, pretty much take everybody on that final load that we were able to get on the shuttle as well to our destination.
Yeah, everyone that was there before us and us got on. I think a few people were still kind of waiting back, but, you know, all the people that waited a really long time, I don't think it's absurd to think you have to wait 15 minutes or so for a shuttle. That's okay.
And it did take longer than 15 minutes from the departure of the 7-passenger van till the arrival of the larger van, but that makes sense because you would have to go switch the vehicles and everything like that. And there may have been other people waiting for other hotels. We don't necessarily know that they were going to our hotel, but that was another thing that caused at least probably another 30 to 45-minute delay.
Yeah.
So we did arrive at our hotel. We were able to skip the check-in process because we had the digital key process. So that was helpful because there was a lot of people that apparently didn't do that and had to wait in line to check in. So luckily we were able to go bypass the front desk and go directly to our room.
Right. And then by then our kids are like super stoked because they like their hotel room. We're finally here. We're on vacation. We're like, it is, oh man, what, like 3 a.m?
I believe it would have been, well, we landed at 1 a.m., probably it was in between the 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. hour when we arrived at the hotel.
Yeah. So we were like, just watch one episode of this like holiday decorating show and then go to bed. So we all pass out in the hotel. And then you have to wake up at 7 a.m. to go get our vehicle for our next day's adventure.
Yes. In fact, it looks like I bought a water at the vending machine with a credit card. And again, because we have all the notifications with the transactions, it appears that happened at 3:23 a.m. Eastern.
That's rough. And that was just to get our water because we also were super thirsty because this airline did not provide drinks unless you paid a ton of money. So we were so thirsty. So yes. Oh, just thinking about it makes me so tired. We were exhausted.
And then, like you said, I think we had a 7 a.m. wake-up call, or at least I did, to go retrieve our vehicle. So again, to save a few pennies, we only rented the car for a less than 24-hour period so that we only had to pay the daily rate one day. So I then took the same shuttle from the hotel back to the ground transportation and rental car area to retrieve the rental car, which had to be a van with booster seats because of the size of our family and the age of our children, which I wasn't really concerned too much because I think I had built in some buffer time for the shuttle trip and just other potential delays. And I was actually able to get on the very first shuttle, and it didn't really have any issues going back from the hotel back to the ground transportation. But when I did arrive at the rental car facility, they did not have any vans readily available. So the employee at the rental car center had to go retrieve the van. And then they did not have any car seats in the lockers. So they had to go to like a truck, basically, that had brand new car seats. So that was a nice bonus that they were like brand new and never had been used before. But they had to go that extra step to retrieve those car seats. And then I was on my way. And then we did get food so that we would again be prepared for all our sightseeing tours, because we were not necessarily sure of the food availability and or prices amongst our travels. So we went to Sonic, and I think that took 40 minutes.
Yeah. Me and the kids stayed at the hotel. And so while you were gone, I was waking them up. They did not want to wake up. Obviously, they didn't go to bed till nearly 4 a.m. They were exhausted. So I was trying to let them sleep as long as possible. So I kept texting you, like, where's your ETA? So you were bringing the car back with food, and we were going to just meet you and leave. I was shocked at how long it took you to bring the food back. So that was stressful, too, because I'm like, are we going to have time? We are supposed to be at the Statue of Liberty security at 10 a.m., I thought. So that was the plan. We needed to get from Newark to the Statue of Liberty ferry. And so that was stressful waiting for the food.
We did finally get the food, and I made my way in traffic. There was surprisingly a lot of traffic for that time of day in that area, which was unexpected as well. But made it back to the hotel, picked everybody up, and thought we had some extra time. So we actually took our time handing out the food because, like you said, our boat time was 10 a.m. and therefore our security arrival time was 10 a.m.
Because it says it on there. In my justification, y'all, I read this thing so many times. I selected the 10 a.m. appointment because I knew that I spent so much time researching all this stuff. And I thought, okay, we don't want to wake up crazy early after a night of travel. 10 a.m. gives us enough time to get breakfast and all that and do this like late morning, early afternoon. The Statue of Liberty was the number one thing we wanted to do. So it was vitally important. We did it on the first day so that way we wouldn't be too exhausted or anything like that. Everything on there says this is the time you show up for security. It is not the time you enter the boat to get onto the Statue of Liberty. This time, the time on your ticket is the time you enter security. Right?
I've never seen said wording, but that is what you relayed to me.
I read it to you, though.
You did read it to me.
Okay. But if you heard what I said, it said the time on your ticket is when you enter the boat. My error is I did not look at the ticket closely. I signed up for the 10 a.m. boat. So I thought my ticket was 10 a.m. We pull up the park, and I pull out my stuff, and I look, and it says 9 a.m. I'm like, oh no, we're an hour late. It's at this point, it's like 9:45 about.
Probably, yeah, maybe around 9:42, I think, is when we pulled in the parking lot.
Yeah. So we thought we had a little bit of a buffer, like, okay, we have a time. We're sitting here. We can walk there. We'll get there right at 10 like we're supposed to. Perfect. Beautiful. And so then I'm sweating because this is the one thing our kids want to do. The tickets are sold out for the day, like already. So I'm trying to tell you subtly what's happening without letting them know because I didn't want them to lose it. So in my head, I'm just praying, like, God, just let us get through. Let us get through. So we're bundling up because it is so cold and windy and everyone's so tired. And I'm rushing us over there because we need to get there as fast as possible. So I'm like, get over. And they're wanting to stop and look from the road, like from the shore. They want to like take in the Statue of Liberty. Look, it's right there. That's amazing. And I do feel bad. I'm like, keep walking. And I'm like pushing people as fast as possible to security.
Precisely. And there was even the walk that we did not know until a later time because we followed the signs that said park at this spot and walk to the dock area to get on the boat and go through security, et cetera, et cetera. But the signage actually took us on a circuitous route that it would have been much faster just to walk directly along the shoreline because that is where the security station was. So we took this big loop, which added at least a few minutes. And actually, if we had not made that loop, we may have made the boat, but we'll never know. And we then got through security. The boat was still there. They were still letting people on as we exited the security building.
Because I thought, like, okay, they let us through. Perfect. They scanned our tickets. Great. We're going through security. I'm like relaxing. And then the guy tells us, you better hurry. They're leaving in 4 minutes or you have to wait an hour. So then I'm like rushing us again. Like, grab your stuff. Let's run. So we start running outside to get to the boat.
Correct. And we did not make it.
No, we didn't. We ran so hard. Everyone did. I'm proud of all of us. But right before we got there, they took off.
So that is not the end of our story about our kitschy trip to New York City, but it is the end of this episode. So tune in next week to hear the conclusion of our travel story. And in the meantime, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. And make sure to tell a friend about this episode from your friends at I Hate Talking. Until next time, remember, it is only through talking that we begin the journey to understanding.